Have you noticed that Mercedes is winning absolutely everything? But there is still a point where they are failing, and that could completely change the championship in Miami? Because yes, the W17 is the most dominant car on the grid right now. They sweep qualifying, they control the race pace, they have the best energy management. But there is one detail that they are hiding among so much success, a problem that has already cost them key positions in each Grand Prix, and that could open the door to their rivals just when it seemed that everything was decided. And here comes the important thing. Mercedes doesn't arrive in Miami with just one more improvement. It arrives with a package that could eliminate its only real weakness or expose something much bigger than it seems. Mercedes is not only dominating the 2026 season, it is controlling it with an authority that we have not seen in Formula One for a long time, and everything revolves around a car that has been practically perfect since the first race, the W17. We're not just talking about the fastest car on a lap, we're talking about a concept that has managed to unite several key areas that normally don't coincide at the same time. Energy efficiency, aerodynamic balance, and absolute consistency in qualifying. The result is clear: 3 races, 3 victories, and the most shocking thing, both cars always in the first positions, setting the pace since Saturday and completely conditioning Sunday. But what's really important is not just that Mercedes is winning, but how it's doing it. Because the W17 does not stand out only for its power or top speed, its true advantage is in energy management, an aspect that in this new technical era makes enormous differences. While other teams suffer drops in performance in certain sectors due to the famous derating, Mercedes has managed to make this loss much more progressive, more controlled, practically invisible compared to its rivals. This means that they can squeeze the car lap after lap without paying the price that others are paying, something that gives them a brutal strategic advantage in the race. Furthermore, the design of the W17 further reinforces this superiority. It is a more compact, lighter car with a much more aggressive philosophy in terms of efficiency, almost perfectly combining electric power and the combustion engine in a balance close to 50-50. This detail is not minor because it completely defines how the car delivers power and how it manages each phase of the lap. In other words, Mercedes not only has more performance, it has better distributed, more usable, more constant performance, and that in Formula One is pure gold. And this is where the real tension of this story begins to build. Because when a car seems so complete, so superior, so difficult to beat, the logical thing would be to think that there are no cracks, that there is no room for urgent improvement, that they should simply continue executing. But the reality is completely different. Within Mercedes, they know perfectly well that there is a critical point that is not working as it should, a detail that is repeated race after race and that breaks, even for a few seconds, that perfection that they have built. Because yes, Mercedes is dominating the championship, but it is not doing so from absolute control at all times of the race. And that nuance, although it may seem small, is exactly what makes the Miami GP much more important than it seems. And it is right here where everything changes, because in the middle of this almost perfect dominance, there is a crack that Mercedes has not been able to hide, a problem that is repeated over and over again, and that, although it has not prevented them from winning, it has made it clear that they are not invincible. We are talking about the exits. That critical moment where everything is defined in seconds, and where the W17, surprisingly, is not up to par with the rest of its performance. Because while they sweep qualifying and control the pace in the race, the moment the lights go out, Mercedes loses ground. Not once, not punctually, but at every Grand Prix of the season. And this is not an external perception, it is not media analysis. It is the team itself that recognizes it. They have pointed out the exits as their greatest weakness, even as the most critical point of the car at this moment, and most importantly, they have classified it as an absolute priority. This completely changes the narrative because it stops being a minor detail and becomes a strategic factor that can determine entire careers. Because let's think about this. Mercedes is winning, even losing positions at the start. That means its real advantage is even bigger than what we see in the results. But it also means that they are competing with a margin that is not always going to be there. The day a rival manages to match them in pace, that mistake at the start can cost them a victory. And this is where Miami comes in as a total turning point. Because the package of improvements they are preparing is not a general evolution of the car. It is a direct attack on this problem. They are specifically working on optimizing the starting system, on correcting that initial loss that forces them to row against the current in the first meters. It is not an aesthetic improvement, it is not a marginal gain. It is a surgical intervention on your only real weakness. But the most interesting thing is what this implies at a competitive level. Because while Mercedes focuses on perfecting itself, its rivals are preparing large packages to close the gap. Ferrari especially arrives with important updates, which turns this Grand Prix into a scenario where two paths can cross, that of a leader seeking to eliminate his latest failure, and that of pursuers trying to take down the giant. And here is the key to everything. If Mercedes solves the exits in Miami, not only will they continue to win, they could completely close any opportunity for the rest. But if the problem persists, if that weakness reappears at the most critical moment, then the championship could open just when it seemed doomed. And now we reach the point where everything is defined. Because Miami is not just another race on the calendar, it is the first real big test for this Mercedes W17. Until now they have dominated, yes, but they have done so with an obvious weakness. And in Formula One, when you have a crack, no matter how small, there is always someone waiting for the exact moment to exploit it. Mercedes knows this, and that is why this package of improvements is not optional, it is a declaration of intent. They are not reacting to a crisis, they are anticipating a possible change in trend. They are attacking their only weak point before their rivals even have a chance to reach them. And that's what separates a dominant team from a dominant era. Because if you analyze it cold, the scenario is clear. If the W17 manages to maintain its superiority in classification, its advantage in energy management, and also corrects the problem at the exits, then we are not talking about a strong car, we are talking about a practically perfect car. A car without visible weak points. And when you reach that level, the championship stops depending on the competition and starts depending solely on yourself. But this is where the other side of the story comes in, pressure. Because the closer you are to perfection, the smaller the margin for error. And if this package doesn't work as expected, if outputs continue to be a problem, then everything changes. Because it would no longer be a specific failure, it would be a structural limitation that rivals can begin to read, understand, and attack. But there is an even deeper level to all of this. Because when a team decides to introduce a package of improvements in a dominant position like Mercedes, it is not only correcting a problem, it is sending a direct message to the rest of the grid. And that message is clear, there is no room to reach them. Because while other teams like Ferrari are forced to bring evolutions to close the gap, Mercedes is in a completely different situation. They don't evolve out of necessity, they evolve out of control. They are shaping the championship at their own pace, choosing when and where to improve, and that completely changes the competitive dynamic. But this also opens up a much more strategic scenario. Because each improvement you introduce not only has benefits, it also has risks. Changing a system as critical as the output involves touching delicate variables. Power delivery, clutch management, hybrid system response. Elements that must work in perfect synchronization in just a few seconds. And when you're at the top, any small mistake in that integration can cost you more than you earn. This is where Miami becomes more than just an upgrade. It becomes a test of balance. Because Mercedes cannot afford to lose what it already has by trying to correct the only thing it lacks. They cannot compromise their consistency, nor their energy management, nor that stable behavior that has led them to dominate the start of the season. And meanwhile, the rivals watch. Because now they have a clear reference. They are no longer chasing an unknown concept. They are no longer completely blind. They have identified the weak point. They know that, all things being equal, the start is the moment where they can attack. And in Formula One, when you detect a specific weakness in the leader, your entire strategy begins to revolve around that. That is why this act is key, because it not only defines what Mercedes is doing, but also how the rest will react. It is not just a technical improvement, it is a move that can reconfigure the strategic battle of the championship. And this is where it all gets even more interesting. Because the question is no longer just whether Mercedes is going to improve, but whether, in the process of doing so, they might be opening up a new opportunity for their rivals to get closer than they should. Ferrari and the rest don't need to be better at everything. They just need to be better at exactly the right moment. And that moment is the exit. That moment where Mercedes has proven to be vulnerable. If they manage to get ahead there, the W17's dominance could begin to falter more than it seems. So Miami is not just about improvements. It is about confirming whether we are seeing the beginning of a historic season completely controlled by Mercedes, or if there is still a door, even if it is small, to change the course of the championship. And in the end, it all comes down to this. Mercedes is not fighting to be the best team on the grid, it already is. The real battle now is against themselves, against that last detail that separates a dominant car from one that is absolutely unbeatable. The W17 has already shown that it has everything to mark an era. Speed, efficiency, consistency, but Miami is going to test something much more important than pure performance. It will test their ability to perfect themselves when they are already at the top. Because in Formula 1 it's not just the fastest who wins. The one who eliminates his weaknesses before someone else takes advantage of them wins. If Mercedes gets this package of improvements right, if they manage to solve that problem at the starts, then the championship can begin to close very early. We would be seeing a team that not only dominates, but evolves at the exact moment to avoid any threat. But if they don't make it, if that weakness reappears when the lights go out in Miami, then everything changes. Because that's where rivals can find their opportunity, not by being faster in general, but by being better at the moment that matters most. So no, Miami is not just another race. It is the point where we will find out if Mercedes is building a historic season without opposition, or if there is still a crack through which this championship can break. And now it's your turn. Do you think Mercedes is going to definitively close the championship in Miami, or are we about to see the beginning of the reaction of its rivals? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.